shift focus now. The 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference in Glasgow has come to a close. Delegates were asked to accelerate action on climate issues and commit to more ambitious cuts in greenhouse gas emissions, all in an effort to limit the rise in global temperature. Let's take a look at some of the agreements that were reached. SABC correspondent Laura Makin-Isherwood joins me now live from Glasgow. Laura, very good morning to you. So after 12 days of wrangling, what have world leaders come up with?
Well, they're still going, actually. We're waiting for a third draft document to be published this morning with re-amended words in there that people are hoping might actually bring these 197 countries to a consensus finally. It was expected around half an hour ago. However, we haven't seen it yet. We've heard from the UK's COP26 President Alok Sharma. We think that he might actually publish that in the next couple of hours. But that's not over even then, because these nations are going to have to come around, look at that revised text and see if that can suit all of their nations' agendas. We know that this is going to be very difficult because finding consensus between so many countries with so many domestic policies and different ways of working, points in development, is tricky. However, climate scientists are saying it is essential to find some sort of agreement because otherwise we're heading towards some sort of catastrophic global temperature rise.
Right. So it continues. My understanding, there's some acknowledgement that fossil fuels contribute to global warming there at COP26, but do you think it'll make its way into the final text?
There's definitely some sort of problem with the coal kind of issue here, if that's what you're asking about. Yeah. There was a revised text that was published yesterday. There were many that were saying that that had weakened the words around coal subsidies, around the use of fossil fuels moving into the future, and there were plenty of countries that weren't happy about that. We understand there's been a bit of a campaign to try and strengthen those words once again, but a lot of activists, the likes of Greenpeace, are saying, well, at least there is some mention of it. Yeah. The reason that people are getting frustrated about this is because of the amount of fossil fuels that will be released into the atmosphere even after this deal is done. So before any of the pledges were made here at COP, we were looking at 52.4 gigatons of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. After the pledges that have been made so far, that's dropped to 41.9, which might sound like a bit of a development, but actually scientists say that we need to be at 26.6, so another 15 or so gigatons less than where these pledges are putting at. And that's why there's such an issue, because if this carries on, if there are all these fossil fuel use, these continuing emissions, then it will push our global temperatures above that 1.5 degree target.
Break that down for us, Laura. Help us understand what this means for you and me. The aim is 1.5 degrees Celsius. That's the proposed target that the world needs to hit. Why? What does the science say?
Well, 1.5 degrees is this target that was set in Paris 6 years ago. That was something that all countries there had said they would attempt to try to meet. That is 1.5 degrees on average of global temperatures being higher than pre-industrial levels. So that's when humans started interacting with the environment and the atmosphere more heavily and introducing fossil fuels then through the introduction of coal-fired power plants, and they have essentially interacted and interjected with the Earth's natural system so much that it's causing damage to it now. So it's a heating of the Earth's atmosphere, melting of the ice caps. That in turn removes the amount of white surfaces on the Earth, which means that the sunlight that's coming in isn't reflected as easily. And the impact of that, of course, is more water in the seas, sea level rise, increased desertification, changes of the Earth's ocean current systems, which could actually shift our climates drastically. For instance, up here in the UK, if the Atlantic current is moved, then we could actually experience very cold temperatures, things that we're not used to. However, further into Africa, in the sub-Sahara, we're looking at extended droughts and increased desertification, and that's going to impact lives, livelihoods, farmers in particular across the African continent will find that they are unable to farm effectively, and that in turn will move to displacement of people. It will also lead to further famines. So there are huge impacts to this if this global temperature rise is not kept low. 2 degrees is seen as the absolute maximum, but obviously the goal here is to reach 1.5, and that is the temperature rise that scientists say can at least be kind of worked with and mitigated.
And like your live shot background, it's a ripple effect, isn't it? That's what we're talking about with regards to how climate change has its tentacles into every aspect of our lives. Talk about, Laura, the presence of protesters, activists at COP26 and the impact they have made.
Yeah, of course, and a lot of the youth element of this has played into these talks as well. Younger people in particular are coming up and standing against this issue, saying that leaders need to listen to them because they are the ones that are going to have to deal with this. If we think about the governments that are in control of our countries right now, they won't be in power in the sort of 10, 15, 20-year time frame. And if we move beyond 2030, which is the limit or the time frame that's being set to many countries to make these big shifts, many of them won't be in power then. So it is the young people that are saying, we are going to have to deal with this. Please do something now so that our children and our children's children will have something to live in, I suppose, some sort of society. And of course, you said about that ripple effect as well. We are having to make huge shifts in our societies to try to agree to this kind of climate change action. We are looking at more renewable energies, perhaps moving away from using petrol and diesel cars into electric vehicles and the like, looking at the way our homes are insulated, making sure that that is really well adapted in our everyday lives to ensure there is no wastage of any fossil fuel use and prevent greenhouse gas emissions. So there is a lot that we need to do in a very short time frame. And people are asking leaders to really think about this, set out a plan and a roadmap that will allow countries to actually put this into action.
You know, I remember covering COP17 almost a decade ago here in Durban. Durban, South Africa. And the question at these COPs is always, is it enough? Are world leaders doing enough? Are scientists, are civil society doing enough? Countries leave COP26. What's next? When do they come back and assess concrete emission cuts?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? And none of the things that are being set out here are actually legally binding. It's all up to these governments to put them into action if they want to, if they can, if their sort of local and domestic mandate will encourage them to do that. So it really will need the support of the people. In terms of coming back, there is a new date set now for people to return every year and really recommit to these kind of ambitions, make sure people are keeping track of them and sort of imposing a sense of peer pressure on different nations to try and make sure that they do stick to it. But I spoke to the Secretary General of the Commonwealth yesterday, and she said that the time really is running out for those nations that are currently feeling the impacts of climate change, those Pacific nations. So while the movement that has already been made here at COP, these pledges should be applauded, she says, there's still a long way to go. And there is a sense of anger, she feels, amongst people that this really needs to be the time for people to take action.
So by some accounts, positive momentum, but I guess the big question is it enough? We shall see. Laura Makin-Isherwood, thank you very much indeed for your reporting. Come back to us, please, if there's any developments with regards to the final text. We'll get you back on air, get the videos the very latest. Thank you.